Good morning. Today is day 42 as we go through the Bible in 102 days. This is a really cool journey so far. Yesterday, we actually read the entire book of Nehemiah, which was neat. And on Saturday, we did the book of Ezra. Today, we'll be reading through the whole book of Esther and starting the book of Job, which is really, really cool. In terms of like where we are, if you want to get a quick visual view of how far along we are, like by reading all the chapters in the Bible, this is it. So this is where we are today. And here, hey guys. So this is where we've done this much. We've got this much to do. We've done about a third of all the chapters in the Bible, which is pretty cool. But something that's neat about this is we're actually going to be doing green for the first part of today. So we'll be finishing this green section here that I've been using to color in these historical books. And we'll be starting a new section, the yellow, that I'll be using for highlighting the wisdom literature / poetry books of Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs. So it's a good day. It's going to be a cool reading, and we've got a lot to get to. So again, we're reading through the whole book of Esther and then Job chapters 1 to 7. So we're getting the really heavy start to Job today, which is going to be cool. I like Job a lot. There's a lot of wisdom, true to the type of book that it is. A lot of wisdom to be learned from reading Job. It's a really interesting book. Now, if you're interested, when I'm reading Monday to Friday from 7 a.m. to about 8:30 in the morning. And then Saturdays, I read at 10 a.m. with someone else accompanying me, which is really fun to get to do this, not just do this alone, but do this with someone else. It is really, really enjoyable. And speaking of, if there's anything that you want to contribute to the discussion, you can add it to this document here, the collaborative notes document. Like this here, that's cool, actually. I just saw this. Someone added this note since yesterday, a sermon series through Nehemiah, if interested. That's cool. That's really cool. Thanks for adding that. Whoever added that, that's really cool. So if there's anything at any point that you want to add to the notes that are being collected and the wisdom and the wealth of information that's being gathered as we go through this, you could just throw it into whatever chapter that we're at. You come here and then you just put a bullet point or whatever where you want and just add the notes and your observations. Then I'll be taking some notes too as we go along. And so after every chapter, I'll take a quick vocal note here, and then so it's just kind of just to give myself a bit of a summary of the chapter that's just been read. So the scriptures are quoted from the NET Bible, https://netbible.com, copyright 1996-2019, used with permission from Biblical Studies Press, LLC, all rights reserved. So let's pray, and then let's start Esther. All right. Lord God, we thank you so much for this morning. We thank you, our King, that you reign on high. You reign victorious. We get to live for you. We get to praise you. We get to adore you, Jesus. Thank you that we have this morning to look into your word. Thank you that we have your word available. May we not let it go by us and take this time for granted that we can spend with you, spend in your word, but may we truly cherish and deeply value your word as we read it and as it changes us, as it shapes us, Lord, into your likeness. Thank you, Jesus. I pray in your name. Amen. All right, let's start with Esther, chapter 1. The king throws a lavish party. So, starting off with a party. Here we go. The following events happened in the days of Ahasuerus. I'm referring to that Oh man, Ahasuerus, who used to rule over 127 provinces extending all the way from India to Ethiopia. In those days, as King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne in Susa, the citadel, in the third year of his reign, he provided a banquet for all his officials and his servants. The army of Persia and Media was present, as well as the nobles and the officials of the provinces. He displayed the riches of his royal glory and the splendor of his majestic greatness for a lengthy period of time, 180 days. Whoa, to be exact. That is crazy. When those days were completed, the king then provided a 7-day banquet for all the people who were present in Susa, the citadel, for those of highest standing to the most lowly. It was held in the court located in the garden of the royal palace. The furnishings included white linen and blue curtains hung by cords of the finest linen, the purple wool on silver rings, alabaster columns, gold and silver couches displayed on a floor made of valuable stones, of alabaster, mother of pearl, and mineral stone. Drinks were served in golden containers, all of which differed from one another. Royal wine was available in abundance at the king's expense. There were no restrictions on the drinking, for the king had instructed all his supervisors that they should do as everyone so desired. Queen Vashti also gave a banquet for the women in King Ahasuerus' palace. Ahasuerus. I'll go with that. On the 7th day, as King Ahasuerus was feeling the effects of the wine, he ordered Mehuman, Bistha, Harbana, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zethar, and Karkas, the 7 eunuchs who attended him, to bring Queen Vashti into the king's presence, wearing her royal high turban. He wanted to show the people and the officials her beauty, for she was very attractive. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's bidding, conveyed through the eunuchs. Then the king became extremely angry, and his rage consumed him. The king then inquired of the wise men who were discerners of the times, for it was the royal custom to confer with all those who were proficient in laws and legalities. Those who were closest to him were Karshena, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Merez, Marsena, and Memucan. These men were the 7 officials of Persia and Media who saw the king on a regular basis and had the most prominent offices in the kingdom. The king asked, by law, what should be done to Queen Vashti in light of the fact that she has not obeyed the instructions of King Ahasuerus, conveyed through the eunuchs? Memucan then replied to the king and the officials, the wrong of Queen Vashti is not against the king alone, but against all the officials and all the people who are throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For the matter concerning the queen will spread to all the women, leading them to treat their husbands with contempt, saying, when King Ahasuerus gave orders to bring Queen Vashti into his presence, she would not come. At this very day the noble ladies of Persia and Media, who have heard the matter concerning the queen, will respond in the same way to all the royal officials, and there will be more than enough contempt and anger. If the king is so inclined, let a royal edict go forth from him, and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media that cannot be repealed, that Vashti may not come into the presence of King Ahasuerus, and let the king convey her royalty to another who is more deserving than she is, and let the king's decision that he will enact be disseminated throughout all his kingdom, vast though it is. Then all the women will give honor to their husbands, from the most prominent to the lowly. The matter seemed appropriate to the king and the officials, so the king acted on the advice of Memucan. He sent letters throughout the royal provinces, to each province according to its own script, and to each people according to their own language, that every man should be ruling his family and should be speaking the language of his own people. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to copy his name because, yeah. Let's just say it's probably not going to get it. Throws a huge celebration in his honor for 180 days and then 7 days of banquet, and then calls for the queen to come out, but she refuses. He seeks the counsel of his advisors, who tell him to make a strong edict so that I'll go with otherwise. Otherwise, all the wives in the kingdom will become rebellious. And the king is also to give the queen's position to someone else who is more deserving. Wow. All right. When these things had been accomplished, and the rage of King Ahasuerus had diminished, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what had been decided against her. The king's servants who attended him said, "Let a search be conducted on the king's behalf for attractive young women, and let the king appoint officers throughout all the provinces of his kingdom to gather all the attractive young women to Susa, the citadel, to the harem, under the authority of Haggai, the king's eunuch, who oversees the women, and let him provide whatever cosmetics they desire. Let the young women whom the king finds most attractive become queen in place of Vashti." This seemed like a good idea to the king, so he acted accordingly. Now there happened to be a Jewish man in Susa, the citadel, whose name was Mordecai. He was the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjaminite, who had been taken into exile from Jerusalem with the captives who had been carried into exile with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had taken into exile. Now he was acting as the guardian of Hadassah, that is, Esther, the daughter of his uncle, for neither her father nor her mother was alive. This young woman was very attractive and had a beautiful figure. Her father and mother died. Mordecai had raised her as if she were his own daughter. So it happened that when the king's edict and his law became known, many young women were taken to Susa, the citadel, to be placed under the authority of Haggai. Esther also was taken to the royal palace to be under the authority of Haggai, who was overseeing the women. This young woman pleased him, and she found favor with him. He quickly provided her with her cosmetics and her rations. He also provided her with the 7 specially chosen young women who were from the palace. He then transferred her and her young women to the best quarters of the harem. Now Esther had not disclosed her people or her lineage, for Mordecai had instructed her not to do so. And day after day, Mordecai used to walk back and forth in the front of the court of the harem in order to learn how Esther was doing and what might happen to her. At the end of the 12 months that were required for the women, when the turn of each young woman arrived to go to King Ahasuerus, for in this way they had to fulfill their time of cosmetic treatment 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months with perfume of various ointments used by women. The woman would go to the king in the following way. Whatever she asked for would be provided for her to take with her to the harem of the royal palace. In the evening she went, and in the morning she returned to a separate part of the harem to the authority of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch who was overseeing the concubines. She would not go back to the king unless the king was pleased with her and she was requested by name. When it became the turn of Esther, daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had raised her as if she were his own daughter, to go to the king, she did not request anything except what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who was overseer of the women, had recommended. Yet Esther met with the approval of all who saw her. Then Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus at his royal residence in the 10th month, that is, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther more than all the other women, and she met with his loving approval more than all the other young women. So he placed the royal high turban on her head and appointed her queen in place of Vashti. The king prepared a large banquet for all his officials and his servants. It was actually Esther's banquet. He also set aside a holiday for the provinces, and he provided for offerings at the king's expense. Now, when the young women were being gathered again, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Esther was still not divulging her lineage or her people, just as Mordecai had instructed her. Esther continued to do whatever Mordecai said, just as she had done when he was raising her. In those days, while Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who protected the entrance, became angry and plotted to assassinate King Ahasuerus. When Mordecai learned of the conspiracy, he informed Queen Esther, and Esther told the king in Mordecai's name. The king then had the matter investigated, and finding it to be so, had the two conspirators hanged on a gallows. It was then recorded in the daily chronicles in the king's presence. All right. So, a search is done throughout the empire to find a new queen. For several months, various different women present themselves to the king over and over again while being treated with all kinds of perfumes and cosmetics. He eventually chooses Esther, who does not divulge her ethnicity. Okay. Okay. Esther 3. Here we go. Haman conspires to destroy the Jews. Actually, okay, sorry. 2 men had conspired to kill the king, but Mordecai found out and had Esther tell the king. Okay. Yeah. When the king finds out that it's true, he has those 2 men hung. Sometime later, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hamadatha, the Agagite, exalting him and setting his position above that of all the officials who were with him. As a result, all of the king's servants who were at the king's gate were bowing and paying homage to Haman, for the king had so commanded. However, Mordecai did not bow, nor did he pay him homage. Then the servants of the king who were at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why are you violating the king's commandment?" And after they had spoken to him day after day, without his paying any attention to them, they informed Haman to see whether this attitude on Mordecai's part would be permitted. Furthermore, he had disclosed to them that he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai was not bowing or paying homage to him, he was filled with rage. But the thought of striking out against Mordecai alone was repugnant to him, for he had been informed of the identity of Mordecai's people. So Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, that is, the people of Mordecai, who were in all the kingdom of Ahasuerus. In the first month, that is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus' reign, that is the lot, was cast before Haman in order to determine a day and a month. It turned out to be the 12th month, that is the month of Adar. Then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, "There is a particular people that is dispersed and spread among the inhabitants throughout all the provinces of your kingdom, whose laws differ from those of all other peoples. Furthermore, they do not observe the king's laws. It is not appropriate for the king to provide a haven for them. If the king is so inclined, let an edict be issued to destroy them. I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to be conveyed to the king's treasuries for the officials who carry out this business." So the king removed his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hamadatha, the Agagite, who was hostile toward the Jews. The king replied to Haman, keep your money and do with those people whatever you wish." Oof. So the royal scribes were summoned in the first month on the 13th day of the month. Everything Haman commanded was written to the king's satraps and governors who were in every province, and to the officials of every people, province by province, according to its script, and people by people according to their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus, it was written and sealed with the king's signet ring. Letters were sent by the runners to all the king's provinces, stating that they should destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, from youth to elderly, both women and children, on a particular day, namely the 13th day of the 12th month, that is, the month of Adar, and to loot and plunder their possessions. A copy of this edict was to be presented as law throughout every province. It was to be made known to all the inhabitants so that they would be prepared for this day. The messengers scurried forth with the king's order. The edict was issued in Susa the citadel, while the king and Haman sat down to drink. The city of Susa was in an uproar. Okay. The people are to pay homage to Haman, one of the king's officials. Mordecai does not bow down to him. Haman goes to see the king so that there will be a genocide of the Jews. The king agrees, and so a date is set for all the Jews throughout the empire to be killed and their houses be plundered. Nice. A bit of an anger issue, you could say. Man. All right. Chapter 4. Now, when Mordecai became aware of all that had been done, he tore his garments and put on sackcloth and ashes. He went out into the city, crying out in a loud and bitter voice. But he went no further than the king's gate, for no one was permitted to enter the king's gate clothed in sackcloth. Throughout each and every province where the king's edict and law were announced, there was considerable mourning among the Jews, along with fasting, weeping, and sorrow. Sackcloth and ashes were characteristic of many. When Esther's female attendants and her eunuchs came and informed her about Mordecai's behavior, the queen was overcome with anguish. Although she sent garments for Mordecai to put on so that he could remove his sackcloth, he would not accept them. So Esther called for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, who had been placed at her service, and instructed him to find out the cause and reason for Mordecai's behavior. So Hathach went to Mordecai at the plaza of the city in front of the king's gate. Then Mordecai related to him everything that had happened to him, even the specific amount of money that Haman had offered to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to be destroyed. He also gave him a written copy of the law that had been disseminated in Susa for their destruction, so that he could show it to Esther and talk to her about it. He also gave instructions so that she should go to the king to implore him and petition him on behalf of her people. So Hathach returned and related Mordecai's instructions to Esther. Then Esther replied to Hathach with instructions for Mordecai. All the servants of the king and the people of the king's provinces know that there is only one law applicable to any man or woman who comes uninvited to the king in the inner court. That person will be put to death, unless the king extends to him the gold scepter, permitting him to be spared. Now, I have not been invited to come to the king for some 30 days. When Esther's reply was conveyed to Mordecai, he said to take back this answer to Esther. Don't imagine that because you are part of the king's household, you will be the one Jew who will escape if you keep quiet all this time. Liberation and protection for the Jews will appear from another source, while you and your father's household perish. It may very well be that you have achieved royal status for such a time as this. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go, assemble all the Jews who are found in Susa and fast on my behalf. Don't eat and don't drink for 3 days, night or day. My female attendants and I will also fast in the same way. Afterward, I will go to the king, even though it violates the law. If I perish, I perish. So Mordecai set out to do everything that Esther had instructed him. Okay. Oops. All right. Mordecai and all the Jews throughout the empire are in distress. Lots of mourning and fasting. Yeah, weeping and sorrow. Okay. Mordecai tells Esther that she should go to the king and plead with him because of this. He says that if she doesn't do it, then there will be deliverance for the people that'll come another way. Which is interesting. It shows kind of like the faith that Mordecai had in the promises of God. It shows that he trusted that God would protect them ultimately and wouldn't see them, that the people wouldn't be fully destroyed. But it's, Yeah, if you keep quiet at this time, liberation and protection for the Jews will appear from another source, while you and your father's household perish. It may very well be that you have achieved royal status for such a time as this. Um, yeah, it's interesting. Esther decides to do it, even though she may die for entering the king's presence uninvited. Yeah. All right, Esther chapter 5 now. It so happened that on the third day, Esther put on her royal attire and stood in the inner court of the palace opposite the king's quarters. The king was sitting on his royal throne in the palace opposite the entrance. When the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, she met his approval. The king extended to Esther the gold scepter that was in his hand, and Esther approached and touched the end of the scepter. The king said to her, "What is on your mind, Queen Esther? What is your request? Even as much as half the kingdom will be given to you." That's crazy. He doesn't invite her to see him for a month, and then he's like, yeah, you can have up to half the kingdom. Anyways, Esther replied, "If the king is so inclined, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for the king." The king replied, "Find Haman quickly so that we can do as Esther requests." So the king and Haman went to the banquet that Esther had prepared. While at the banquet of wine, the king said to Esther, "What is your request? It shall be given to you. What is your petition? Ask for as much as half the kingdom, and it shall be done." Esther responded, "My request is and my petition is this: if I have found favor in the king's sight, and if the king is inclined to grant my request and approve my petition, let the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet I will prepare for them. At that time I will do as the king wishes." Now Haman went forth that day, pleased and very much encouraged. But when Haman saw Mordecai at the king's gate, and he did not rise or tremble in his presence, Haman was filled with rage toward Mordecai. But Haman restrained himself and went on to his home. He then sent for his friends to join him along with his wife Zeresh. Haman then recounted to them his fabulous wealth, his many sons, and how the king had magnified him and exalted him over the king's other officials and servants. Haman said, "Furthermore, Queen Esther invited only me to accompany the king to the banquet that she prepared. And also tomorrow I am invited along with the king. Yet all this fails to satisfy me so long as I have to see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate." Haman's wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, he have a gallows 75 feet high built. What? "And in the morning, tell the king that Mordecai should be hanged on it. Then go with the king to the banquet contented. Yeah. Oh, man. It seemed like a good idea to Haman, so he had the gallows built. What? That's so what? Okay. All right. Queen Esther arranges a banquet for her, the king, and Haman to meet at, where the king asks what her request is, and he will give her up to half his kingdom. She invites them to a banquet the next day. Haman, on his way home, sees Mordecai, who does not respond in a way to give him honor, and this enrages Haman. And so he goes home to gloat about his greatness and share his frustration with Mordecai about and his wife advises him to build a gallows 75 feet high. Crazy. Esther chapter 6. Throughout that night, the king was unable to sleep, so he asked for the book containing the historical records to be brought. As the records were being read in the king's presence, it was found written that Mordecai had disclosed that Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who guarded the entrance, had plotted to assassinate King Ahasuerus. The king asked, what great honor was bestowed on Mordecai because of this? The king's attendants who served him responded, not a thing was done for him. Then the king said, who is that in the courtyard? Now Haman had come to the outer courtyard of the palace to suggest that the king hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had constructed for him. The king's attendants said to him, it is Haman who is standing in the courtyard. The king said, let him enter. So Haman came in, and the king said to him, what should be done for the man whom the king wishes to honor? Haman thought to himself, who is it that the king would want to honor more than me? So Haman said to the king, for the man whom the king wishes to honor, let them bring royal attire, which the king himself has worn, and a horse on which the king himself has ridden, one bearing the royal insignia. Then let his clothing and his horse be given to one of the king's noble officials. Let him then clothe the man whom the king wishes to honor, and let him lead him about throughout the plaza of the city on the horse, calling before him. So shall it be done to the man whom the king wishes to honor. The king then said to Haman, go quickly, take the clothing and the horse, just as you have described, and do just as you indicated to Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Don't neglect a single thing of all you have said. Oh man, that's funny. So Haman took the clothing and the horse, and he clothed Mordecai. He led him about on the horse throughout the plaza of the city, calling before him, so it be done to the man whom the king wishes to honor. Then Mordecai again sat at the king's gate, while Haman hurried away to his home, mournful with a veil over his head. Haman then related to his wife Zeresh and to all his friends everything that had happened to him. These wise men, along with his wife Zeresh, said to him, if indeed this Mordecai before whom you have begun to fall is Jewish, you will not prevail against him. No, you will surely fall before him. While they were still speaking with him, the king's eunuchs arrived. They quickly brought Haman to the banquet that Esther had prepared. Wow, that is funny. This is like one of the most ironic twists. There's a lot of funny ironic twists in the Bible, but this is one of the best ones. Okay. The king is restless and then realizes that he had never done anything to honor Mordecai. Haman comes to see the king and says that the king should greatly honor someone throughout the city. Haman also wanted to have Mordecai hung at the gallows he had just constructed to hang Mordecai at. The king says this is a great idea. Take Mordecai and honor him throughout the city. So Haman dresses Mordecai in robes and honor and parades him throughout the city. Oh my God. This is so funny. Oh. All right, hold on. Then he goes home and mourns. Then he is brought to the banquet. Oh. Yeah, very ironic indeed. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, man. All right, Esther chapter 7. So the king and Haman came to dine with Queen Esther on the second day of the banquet of wine. The king asked Esther, "What is your request, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you. And what is your petition? Ask for up to half the kingdom, and it shall be done." Queen Esther replied, "If I have met with your approval, O king, and if the king is so inclined, grant me my life as my request, and my people as my petition. For we have been sold, both I and my people, to destruction and to slaughter and to annihilation. If we had simply been sold as male and female slaves, I would have remained silent, for such distress would not have been sufficient for troubling the king." Then King Ahasuerus responded to Queen Esther, "Who is this individual? Where is this person to be found who is presumptuous enough to act in this way?" Esther replied, "The oppressor and enemy is this evil Haman." Then Haman became terrified in the presence of the king and queen. In rage, the king arose from the banquet of wine and withdrew to the palace garden. Meanwhile, Haman stood to beg Queen Esther for his life, for he realized that the king had now determined a catastrophic end for him. When the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet of wine, Haman was throwing himself down on the couch where Esther was lying. The king exclaimed, "Will he also attempt to rape the queen while I am still in the building?" As these words left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Harbona, one of the king's eunuchs, said, "Indeed, there is the gallows that Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke out on the king's behalf. It stands near Haman's home and is 75 feet high." The king said, "Hang him on it." So they hanged Haman on the very gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. The king's rage then abated. Whoa, man. This is, the twist just continues. It just didn't quite go how Mordecai was, or not how Mordecai, didn't quite go how Haman was thinking things would go for Mordecai, or for himself. Wow. Okay. That's okay. At this second day of banquet, Esther tells the king how her people are set for annihilation because of Haman. Haman, who despised the Jews, begs and falls before Esther, begging for mercy. And when the king sees this, he thinks that he is also going to try to rape the queen. So the king has Haman hung on the gallows that Haman had prepared for Mordecai. Yikes. Esther chapter 8 now. On the same day, King Ahasuerus gave the estate of Haman, that adversary of the Jews, to Queen Esther. Now Mordecai had come before the king, for Esther had revealed how he was related to her. The king then removed his signet ring, the very one he had taken back from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther designated Mordecai to be in charge of Haman's estate. That's so funny. Oh, man. Okay. Then Esther again spoke with the king, falling at his feet. She wept and begged him for mercy, that he might nullify the evil of Haman the Agagite and the plot that he had intended against the Jews. When the king extended to Esther the gold scepter, she arose and stood before the king. She said, "If the king is so inclined, and if I have met with his approval, and if the matter is agreeable to the king, and if I am attractive to him, let an edict be written, rescinding those recorded intentions of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he rose in order to destroy the Jews who are throughout all the king's provinces. For how can I watch the calamity that will befall my people? And how can I watch the destruction of my relatives? King Ahasuerus replied to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, "Look, I have already given Haman's estate to Esther, and he has been hanged on the gallows because he took hostile action against the Jews. Now write in the king's name whatever in your opinion is appropriate concerning the Jews, and seal it with the king's signet ring. Any decree that is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's signet ring cannot be rescinded." The king's scribes were quickly summoned in the 3rd month, that is, the month of Sivan. On the 23rd day, they wrote out everything that Mordecai instructed to the Jews, and to the satraps, and the governors, and the officials of the provinces, and all the way from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces in all, to each province in its own script, and to each people in their own language, and to the Jews according to their own script and their own language. Mordecai wrote in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed it with the king's signet ring. He then sent letters by couriers who rode royal horses that were very swift. The king therefore allowed the Jews who were in every city to assemble and to stand up for themselves, to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate any army of whatever people or province that should become their adversaries, including their women and children, and to confiscate their property. This was to take place on a certain day throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely on the 13th day of the 12th month, that is the month of Adar. A copy of the edict was to be presented as law throughout each and every province and made known to all peoples, so that the Jews might be prepared on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers who were riding the royal horses went forth with the king's edict without delay, and the law was presented in Susa the citadel as well. Now Mordecai went out from the king's presence in blue and white royal attire, with a large golden crown and a purple linen mantle. The city of Susa shouted with joy, for the Jews there was radiant happiness and joyous honor throughout every province and throughout every city where the king's edict and his law arrived. The Jews experienced happiness and joy, banquets and holidays. Many of the resident peoples pretended to be Jews because the fear of the Jews had overcome them. All right. This is like plot twist after plot twist. Okay. Esther begs the king to save the Jews who are set for annihilation. And so the king sends forth another edict saying that all the Jews can defend themselves on the day that they are set to be annihilated. And they can fight against any army. Mordecai is raised to this place of Haman's honor. Haman's land was given to Esther, who gave it to Mordecai. This is, oh man. This is really funny. Actually, I haven't checked how it's been spelling Haman this whole time, but looking at these two, I'm guessing it's probably not quite right. Haman. Oh no, it's spelled it right before. Okay. All right. The Jews. Okay, that's yeah. In the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day, the edict of the king and his law were to be executed. It was on this day that the enemies of the Jews had supposed that they would gain power over them. But contrary to expectations, the Jews gained power over their enemies. The Jews assembled themselves in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus to strike out against those who were seeking their harm. No one was able to stand before them, for dread of them fell on all the peoples, all the officials of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, and those who performed the king's business were assisting in the king's palace. And word about him was spreading throughout all the provinces. His influence continued to become greater and more and greater. Wait, I think I skipped a line. For the dread of Mordecai, governors, all the officials of the provinces, satraps, governors, and those who performed the king's business were assisting the Jews, for the dread of Mordecai had fallen on them. Mordecai was of high rank. Okay, that's it. The Jews struck all their enemies with the sword, bringing death and destruction, as they did, and they did as they pleased with their enemies. In Susa, the citadel, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men. In addition, they also killed Parshandatha, Dalphon, Aspatha, Poratha, Adalia, Aridatha, Parmashta, Arisai, Aridai, and Vaizatha, the 10 sons of Haman, son of Mamadatha, the enemy of the Jews. But they did not confiscate their property. On that same day, the number of those killed in Susa, the citadel, was brought to the king's attention. Then the king said to Queen Esther, in Susa, the citadel, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman. What then have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? What is your request? It shall be given to you. What other petition do you have? It shall be done. Esther replied, if the king is so inclined, let the Jews who are in Susa be permitted to act tomorrow also according to today's law, and let them hang the 10 sons of Haman on the gallows. So the king issued orders for this to be done. A law was passed in Susa, and the 10 sons of Haman were hanged. The Jews who were in Susa then assembled on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and they killed 300 men in Susa, but they did not confiscate their property. The rest of the Jews who were throughout the provinces of the king assembled in order to stand up for themselves and to have rest from their enemies. They killed 75,000 of their adversaries, but they did not confiscate their property. All this happened on the 13th day of the month of Adar. They then rested on the 14th day and made it a day for banqueting and happiness. But the Jews who were in Susa assembled on the 13th and 14th days and rested on the 15th day, making it a day for banqueting and happiness. This is why the Jews who are in the rural country, those who live in rural villages, set aside the 14th day of the month of Adar for happiness, banqueting, a holiday, and sending gifts to one another. Mordecai wrote these matters down and sent letters to all the Jews who were throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, to have them observe the 14th and the 15th days of the month of Adar each year, as the time when the Jews gave themselves rest from their enemies, the month when their trouble was turned to happiness and their mourning to a holiday. These were to be the days of banqueting, happiness, sending gifts to one another, and providing for the poor. So the Jews committed themselves to continuing what they had begun to do and to what Mordecai had written to them. For Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all Jews, had devised plans against the Jews to destroy them. He cast pur, that is the lot, in order to afflict and destroy them. But when the matter came to the king's attention, the king gave written orders that Haman's evil intentions that he had devised against the Jews should fall on his own head, and he and his sons were hanged on the gallows. For this reason, these days are known as Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore, because of the account found in this letter and what they had faced in this regard and what had happened to them, the Jews established as binding on themselves their descendants and all who joined their company that they should observe these 2 days without fail, just as written and at the appropriate time on the annual basis. These days were to be remembered and to be celebrated in every generation and in every family, every province and every city. The Jews were not to fail to observe these days of Purim. The remembrance of them was not to cease among their descendants. So Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew wrote with full authority to confirm this second letter about Purim. Letters were sent to all the Jews in the 127 provinces of the empire of Ahasuerus, words of true peace, to establish these days of Purim in their proper times, just as Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther had established, and just as they established both for themselves and their descendants matters pertaining to fasting and lamentation. Esther's command established these matters of Purim, and the matter was officially recorded. All right. This is interesting. So, the day set for the genocide of the Jews happens, but the Jews fight back and conquer over their enemies. The Jews celebrate with a banquet and festival. After that, a festival was celebrated every year called It's interesting the amount of banquets there are in this book. It's obviously intentional, but it's pretty cool. Oh, this is a very, very short chapter. Shortest chapter we've seen so far in the Bible as we've been going through. This is it. 3 verses only. King Ahasuerus then imposed forced labor on the land and on the coastlands of the sea. Now all the actions carried out under his authority and his great achievements, along with an exact statement concerning the greatness of Mordecai, whom the king promoted, are not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia. Now all the actions... Mordecai, whom the king, are they not? Written in the books of the Chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia. Mordecai the Jew was second only to King Ahasuerus. He was the highest ranking Jew, and he was admired by his numerous relatives. He worked enthusiastically for the good of his people and was an advocate for the welfare of all his descendants. All right. Mordecai became second and in command and was greatly held in honor. All right. That's it for Esther. That is the, the funniest part of it all. Yeah. Yeah, Francesca, this is so funny. There's so much like irony in this story. It's a very funny book to read. It's a very ironic book to read with everything that happens with the, there's the feasts that go on, and you read of these festivals, but then it's like, oh, but there's going to be like this day of like insane destruction and insane calamity. But that ends up for the people who were scheduled to be destroyed. That ends up being the day where they have a new festival to celebrate now too. But like the whole irony of Haman and Mordecai is just so comical, and like as and like his idea of like, hey, I'm gonna have King, you should have someone ride around the city and people proclaim like honor to this person. And then the king's like, yeah, actually, I was just thinking we should do something for Mordecai. And then, oh, so funny. But let's read Job. We are starting the book of Job now. Oh, man. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. His possessions included 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 female donkeys. In addition, he had a very great household. Thus, he was the greatest of all the people in the East. Now his sons used to go and hold a feast in the house of each one in turn, and they would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. When the days of their feasting were finished, Job would send for them and sanctify them. He would get up early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job thought, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. This was Job's customary practice. Now the day came when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also arrived among them. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" And Satan answered the Lord, "From roving about on the earth, and from walking back and forth across it." So the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and turns away from evil." Then Satan answered the Lord, "Is it not for nothing that Job fears God? Have you not made a hedge around him and his household and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his livestock have increased in the land. But extend your hand and strike everything he has, and he will no doubt curse you to your face." So the Lord said to Satan, "All right then, everything he has is in your power. Only do not extend your hand against the man himself." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Now the day came when Job's sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And a messenger came to Job saying, "The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing beside them. And the Sabaeans swooped down and carried them all away. And they killed the servants with the sword. And only I alone escaped to tell you." While this one was still speaking, another messenger arrived and said, "The fire of God has fallen from heaven and has burned up the sheep and the servants, it has consumed them, and only I alone escaped to tell you." While this one was still speaking, another messenger arrived and said, "The Chaldeans formed 3 bands and made a raid on the camels and carried them all away. And they killed the servants with a sword, and only I alone escaped to tell you." While this one was still speaking, another messenger arrived and said, "Your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in the oldest brother's house, and suddenly a great wind swept across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they died. And only I alone escaped to tell you." Then Job got up, tore his robe, he shaved his head, and then threw himself down with his face to the ground. He said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will return there. The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. May the name of the Lord be blessed." In all this, Job did not sin, nor did he charge God with moral impropriety. Wow. All right. This is one of those books you got to buckle up for because it gets real heavy. All right. The royal... Nope, I'm restarting that. The heavenly council, where Satan shows up and tells God he's been roaming around the earth. And God mentions his servant Job, who is blameless and upright. Satan says that it is because God has blessed Job with all kinds of earthly possessions and riches and children. God allows Satan to strike Job's possessions and children, but not to touch Job himself. 4 different messengers arrive, one after the other, each one saying that they are the only one to survive a certain catastrophe that leaves Job without any of his livestock or children. Job falls down, mourning and praising God. Just crazy. This is like one of the most, I don't know, significant declarations of faith and trust in God anywhere in the Bible. Like, just, oh man, in like all this happens, and then he falls down and says, "Bless, may the name of the Lord be blessed." Oh man, that's, yeah, that's interesting. It's a lot of food for thought there, but we got to keep reading for this morning. We got a few more chapters to get through, but definitely a lot of food for thought there. And in the face of calamity, like, what is our response? Is it to, just get mad and turn from God, or is it to say, blessed be the name of the Lord? Anyways, let's keep reading. Again, the day came when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also arrived among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From roaming about on the earth, and from walking back and forth across it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? For there is no one like him on the earth, a pure and upright man, one who fears God and turns away from evil. And he still holds firmly to his integrity, so that you stirred me up to destroy him without reason." But Satan answered the Lord, "Skin for skin. Indeed, a man will give up all that he has to save his life. But extend your hand and strike his bone and his flesh, and he will no doubt curse you to your face." So the Lord said to Satan, "All right, he is in your power. Only preserve his life." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord, and he afflicted Job with a malignant ulcer from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Job took a shard of broken pottery to scrape himself with while he was sitting among the ashes. Then his wife said to him, "Are you still holding firmly to your integrity? Curse God and die." But he replied, "You're talking like one of the godless women would do. Should we receive what is good from God and not also receive what is evil? In all this, Job did not sin by what he said." When Job's 3 friends heard about all this calamity that had happened to him, each one of them came from his own country: Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. They met together to come to show sympathy for him and to console him. But when they gazed intently from a distance, but did not recognize him, they began to weep loudly. Each of them tore his robes, and they threw dust into the air over their heads. Then they sat down with him on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights. Yet no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his pain was very great. Another view of the heavenly council. This time, Satan says that if God strikes Job himself, then Job will curse God, because people will do anything to save their own lives. God allows Satan to strike Job's health, and so Job is covered in boils. Job's wife comes to him to tell him to curse God and die. Job says that she is acting like a godless woman. Just, oh man. Really impressive. Really, really impressive. Yeah. And accepts. Job's three friends show up to console him, but they tear their clothes and throw ashes on their heads when they see him. And they all sit together in silence for 7 days. I want to get their names. I mean, their names are going to come up again, but I want to have them there. Through dust. I guess it's dust, not ashes. Okay. Job 3. Here we go. Now we're getting into some a lot of conversation with his friends. A lot of very long conversations that are not very helpful or productive. And actually, not yet. Is it? Job wishes he had died. No, sorry. Soon we will get to this. Job breaks the ice first, talking about his pain, but then after that, though, we'll get to it. Okay. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day he was born. Job spoke up and said, "Let the day on which I was born perish, and the night that said a man has been conceived. That day let it be darkness. Let not God on high regard it, nor let light shine on it. Let darkness and the deepest shadow claim it. Let a cloud settle on it. Let whatever dark or blackens the day terrify it. That night let darkness seize it. Let it not be included among the days of the year. Let it not enter among the number of the months. Indeed, let that night be barren. Let no shout of joy penetrate it. Let those who curse the day curse it. Those who are prepared to rouse Leviathan. Let its morning stars be darkened. Let it wait for daylight, but find none, nor let it see the first rays of dawn, because it did not shut the doors of my mother's womb on me, nor did it hide trouble from my eyes. Why did I not die at birth, and why did I not expire as I came out of the womb? Why did the knees welcome me, and why were there 2 breasts that I might nurse at them? For now I would be lying down and would be quiet. I would be asleep and then at peace with kings and counselors of the earth, who built for themselves places now desolate, or with princes who possessed gold, who filled their palaces with silver. Or why was I not buried like a stillborn infant, like infants who have never seen the light? There the wicked cease from turmoil, and there the weary are at rest. There the prisoners relax together. They do not hear the voice of the oppressor. Small and great are there, and the slave is free from his master. Why does God give light to one who is in misery, and life to those whose soul is bitter? To those who wait for death that does not come and search for it more than for hidden treasures, who rejoice even to jubilation and are exultant when they find the grave. Why is light given to a man whose way is hidden and whom God has hedged in? For my sighing comes in place of my food, and my groanings flow forth like water. For the very thing I dreaded has happened to me, and what I feared has come upon me. I have no ease. I have no quietness. I cannot rest. Turmoil has come upon me. Yeah. Job expresses in great anguish how he wishes he had never been born and wonders why he was ever alive. Job 4. There you go. Now we start to get the friends who have some bad advice. Then Eliphaz the Temanite answered, "If someone should attempt a word with you, will you be impatient? I'll copy that. I'll just copy Eliphaz. Oh, sorry. But who can refrain from speaking? Look, you have instructed many. You have strengthened feeble hands. Your words have supported those who stumbled, and you have strengthened the knees that gave way. But now the same thing comes to you, and you are discouraged. It strikes you, and you are terrified. Is not your piety your confidence, and your blameless ways your hope? Call to mind now, who, being innocent, ever perished, and where were upright people ever destroyed? Even as I have seen, those who plow iniquity and those who sow trouble reap the same. By the breath of God they perish. By the blast of his anger they are consumed. There is the roaring of the lion and the growling of the young lion, but the teeth of the young lions are broken. The mighty lion perishes for lack of prey, and the cubs of the lioness are scattered. Now a word was stealthily brought to me, and my ear caught a whisper of it. In the troubling thoughts of the dreams in the night, when a deep sleep falls on men, dread gripped me and trembling, which made all my bones shake. Then a breath of air passes by my face. It makes the hair of my flesh stand up. It stands still, but I cannot recognize its appearance. An image is before my eyes, and I hear a murmuring voice. Is a mortal man righteous before God, or a man pure before his Creator? If God puts no trust in his servants and attributes folly to his angels, how much more to those who live in houses of clay, whose foundations are in the dust, who are crushed like a moth? They are destroyed between morning and evening. They perish forever without anyone regarding it. Is not their excess wealth taken away from them? They die, yet without attaining wisdom. Okay. Speaks up, asking Job if he will receive their wisdom. After Job has spent many years instructing others to do well. Is a mortal man righteous before God? Is impure before his Creator? Okay, Job chapter 5. Call now. Is there anyone who will answer you? To which of the holy ones will you turn? For wrath kills the foolish person, and anger slays the silly one. I myself have seen the fool taking root, but suddenly I cursed his place of residence. His children are far from safety, and they are crushed at the place where judgment is rendered, nor is there anyone to deliver them. The hungry eat up his harvest, and take it even from behind the thorns, and the thirsty pant for their wealth. For evil does not come up from the dust, nor does trouble spring up from the ground. But people are born to trouble, as surely as the sparks fly upward. But as for me, I would seek God, and to God I would set forth my case. He does great and unsearchable things, marvelous things without number. He gives rain on the earth and sends water on the fields. He sets the lowly on high, that those who mourn are raised to safety. He frustrates the plans of the crafty, so that their hands cannot accomplish what they had planned. He catches the wise in their own craftiness, and the counsel of the cunning is brought to a quick end. They meet with darkness in the daytime, and grope about in the noontime as if it were night. So he saves from the sword that comes from their mouth, even the poor from the hand of the powerful. Thus the poor have hope, and iniquity shuts in its mouth. Therefore blessed is the man who God corrects. So Do not despise the discipline of the Almighty, for he wounds, but he also bandages. He strikes, but his hand also heal. But his hands also heal. He will deliver you from 6 calamities. Yes, in 7, no evil will touch you. In time of famine, he will redeem you from death, and in time of war from the power of the sword. You will be protected from malicious gossip, and will not be afraid of the destruction when it comes. You will laugh at destruction and famine, and need not be afraid of the beasts of the earth, for you will have a pact with the stones of the field, and the wild animals will be at peace with you, and you will know that your home will be secure. And when you inspect your domains, you will not be missing anything. You will also know that your children will be numerous, and your descendants like grass of the earth. You will come to your grave in a full age, as stacks of grain are harvested in their season. Look, we have investigated this, so it is true. Hear it and apply it for your own good. Okay. Talks about how powerful God is. And so he tells Job to listen to the discipline that God is doing to him. Okay. Then Job responded, "Oh, if only my grief could be weighed, and my misfortune laid on the scales too. But because it is heavier than the sand of the sea, that is why my words have been wild. For the arrows of the Almighty are within me. My spirit drinks their poison. God's sudden terrors are arrayed against me. Does the wild donkey bray when it is near grass, or does the ox bellow over its fodder? Can food that is tasteless be eaten without salt? Or is there any taste in the white of an egg? I have refused to touch such things. They are loathsome food to me. Oh, that my request would be realized, that God would grant me what I long for, and that God would be willing to crush me, that he would let loose his hand and kill me. Then I would yet have my comfort. Then I would rejoice in spite of pitiless pain. For I have not concealed the words of the Holy One. What is my strength that I should wait? And what is my end that I should prolong my life? Is my strength like that of stones, or my flesh made of bronze? Is not my power to help myself nothing? And has not every resource been driven from me? That's a funny title, Disappointing Friends. To the one in despair, kindness should come from his friend, even if he forsakes the fear of the Almighty. My brothers have been as treacherous as seasonal stream, and as the riverbeds of the intermittent streams that flow away. They are dark because of ice. Snow is piled up over them. When they are scorched, they dry up. When it is hot, they vanish from their place. Caravans turn aside from their routers. They go into the wasteland and perish. The caravans of Tema looked intently for these streams. The traveling merchants of Sheba hoped for them. They were distressed because each one had been so confident. They arrived there, but were disappointed. For now you have become like these streams that are no help. You see a terror and are afraid. Have I ever said, give me something, and from your fortune make gifts in my favor? Or deliver me from my enemy's power, and from the hand of tyrants ransom me? Teach me, and I, for my part, will be silent. Explain to me how I have been mistaken. How painful are honest words. But what does your reproof prove? Do you intend to criticize mere words, and to treat the words of a despairing man as wind? Yes, you would gamble for the fatherless and auction off your friend. Now then, Be good enough to look at me, and I will not lie to your face. Relent, let there be no falsehood. Reconsider, for my righteousness is intact. Is there any falsehood on my lips? Can my mouth not discern evil things? Okay, yeah. In Job chapter 6, this is Job wishes that God would take his life, accuses his friends of being bad friends, says that he is, did he use the word upright? His righteousness is intact. Is that all right? His righteousness is intact. Oh, Marco. Hey, bro. How's it going? All right. Now we come to Job chapter 7. This is the last chapter for this morning. We're going to keep going through Job the next few days. But yeah, definitely a heavy book. Here we go. Does not humanity have hard service on earth? Are not their days also like the days of a hired man? Like a servant longing for the evening shadow, and like a hired man looking for his wages. Thus I have made to inherit months of futility, and nights of sorrow have been appointed to me. If I lay down, I say, when will I arise? And the night stretches on, and I toss and turn restlessly until the day dawns. My body is clothed with worms and dirty scabs. My skin is broken and festering. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle, and they come to an end without hope. Remember that my life is but a breath, that my eyes will never again see happiness. The eye of him who sees me now will see me no more. Your eyes will look for me, but I will be gone. As a cloud is dispersed and then disappears, so the one who goes down to the grave does not come up again. He returns no more to his house, nor does his place of residence know him any more. Therefore, I will not refrain my mouth. I will speak in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. Am I the sea or the creature of the deep, that you must put me under guard? If I say, my bed will comfort me, my couch will ease my complaint, then you scare me with dreams and terrify me with visions, so that I would prefer strangling and death more than life. I loathe it. I do not want to live forever. Leave me alone, for my days are a vapor. What is mankind that you make so much of them, and that you pay attention to them, and that you visit them every morning and try them every moment? Will you never look away from me? Will you not let me alone long enough to swallow my spittle? For if I have sinned, what have I done to you, O watcher of men? Why have you set me as your target? Have I become a burden to you? And why do you not pardon my transgression and take away my iniquity? For now I will lie down in the dust, and you will seek me diligently, but I will be gone. Wow. Yeah, that's depressing. But it's yeah, depressing story for sure. But there's a lot, like I was saying before, a lot of wisdom to be learned from this book, like so much, and we've got gained a little bit this morning, and there's so much more to be gained, and I'm excited to be going through Job. It's honestly like a really good book to read. I really not enjoy it in like a sadistic way, but like enjoy it in terms of like the insane wealth of wisdom there is in this book. So I'm excited to be reading it. And it's also fun that this morning's first book that we read, Esther, was really funny, really ironic. The twists that happen with Haman and Mordecai, it was really, really funny. But Now we're in Job, and things get like really, really serious, really heavy. But we are going to keep looking at it, keep growing some more as we look at it. I'm gonna highlight now. This is fun because now we're actually switching to a different color, and then, or there you go, webcam. All right, this is the this is the last green that we're doing, the last of the historical books of the Old Testament. Esther right there, all colored in green. I really enjoy this. It's really satisfying to do after every reading, to just color something in a little bit. And then the first 7 chapters of Job. I hope this shows. I hope you can see the yellow on the camera. It might not show, but hopefully it does. I don't know. Can you see that? No, not really. Not at all. Okay, I was hoping you'd be able to see that. There you go. A little bit of yellow. All right, let's pray, and and then we'll have a great day ahead of us. Lord God, I thank you for this morning. Thank you for this reading. Thank you for your faithfulness and how you are true to your word. You are true to your promises, that when you make a promise, it is firm. It is unchanging. Lord, I thank you for your greatness, for your might. I thank you that we can trust you. I pray that you would give us strength and in our faith in you, that you would strengthen our trust in you, that you would grow our love and our devotion to you and our faith in you, that regardless of what happened, if absolute calamity were to fall on us, as it did on Job, that we would turn to you in praise, that we would say, blessed be the name of the Lord, that we would trust you, that we would trust your justice, that we would trust your judgment, your righteousness, your goodness, your kindness, your faithfulness. Lord, I pray for the day before us, that we would serve you, that we would go into this day representing you, excited to live for you today. Thank you for the immense value of the day before us, that we wouldn't take it for granted, that we would just be filled with your joy, your life today. I pray in your great name, Yeshua. Amen. I hope you'll have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care and abide with him today. God bless.